for a half hour of high adventure.
And welcome to Real Talk Rewind. I'm your host, Chris. Thanks for joining me. This show is not about clean textbook narratives. It's about the shadows lurking beneath the stories, the contradictions, the scandals, the humanity history often hides. Every episode, we go back in time together. We dig into stories that classrooms skip, stories and speeches buried under marble words, stories reminding us leaders are human too. Today, we start at the highest office, the American presidency. Not the polished portraits, not the slogans or campaign speeches, but the darker side, the flaws, the failures, the shadows clinging to immense power. So let's rewind. Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson wrote the words, "All men are created equal." They echo through centuries as America's guiding poem, but his life was drenched in contradiction and brutality. At Monticello, he enslaved over 600 people. He sold human beings to cover mounting debts. He profited from the very system he publicly condemned. Then there was Sally Hemings, enslaved in his household. He fathered at least 6 of her children. She had no choice, no power to consent. Liberty on parchment, exploitation in practice. Even today, wounds remain unhealed and stories buried. Jefferson's brilliance shaped the nation's dream. His hypocrisy shaped America's deepest scars. Andrew Jackson. They called him Old Hickory, tough, relentless, stubborn. He wore his reputation with aggressive pride, but Jackson's toughness hid his brutality underneath. In 1830, he signed the Indian Removal Act. On paper, relocation. In reality, ethnic cleansing. Tens of thousands of Native Americans marched west. Cherokee, Creek, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Seminole. Families died. Children starved. Elders perished. The Trail of Tears formed. At least 15,000 lost their lives, historians say. The Supreme Court tried to stop him. In Worcester versus Georgia, the court ruled against Jackson. He defied it completely. John Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it, he reportedly said. Law meant nothing. His will dominated. Yet every $20 bill still bears his face. Bloodstained power woven into American identity. And then there's Abe Lincoln. And this one hits a little bit harder for me because Lincoln is still one of my favorite presidents. Lincoln, the great emancipator, the Union's savior, but even his record contains shadows and compromises. During the Civil War, Lincoln suspended habeas corpus. Citizens could be jailed without trial or dissent. Thousands were locked up for opposing the war. Freedom of speech became secondary to military necessity. The Emancipation Proclamation freed only rebellious states. Slavery went on in Kentucky and Delaware and border states. Freedom was partial, limited, strategic, not universal. Lincoln's legacy towers, but it's not flawless. Even the great emancipator compromised liberty in crisis. Let's jump forward to the early 20th century with Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson led America into the First World War. Abroad, he preached democracy, morality, and progress. At home, he practiced segregation and oppression. Wilson resegregated the federal government upon taking office. Black workers moved into separate bathrooms, cafeterias, and offices. Some were demoted, others fired for skin color alone. A government meant to represent all sanctioned discrimination. And then came Birth of a Nation, a glorified KKK film. Wilson reportedly called it history written with lightning. He screened it publicly at the White House. Presidency stamped approval on racist propaganda. Democracy abroad, denial at home. A very tragic contradiction. Franklin Roosevelt. FDR brought hope during the Great Depression. He led America through World War II with determination, but his legacy contained shadows too heavy to ignore. After Pearl Harbor, Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. 120,000 Japanese Americans were in prison. 2/3 of them were American citizens, ripped from their homes, businesses destroyed, families confined behind barbed wire. Their crime? Simply existing during a wartime paranoia. FDR defended freedom abroad while denying it at home. Even heroes carry contradictions, hidden in plain sight. History remembers leadership, Reality remembers its victims. John F. Kennedy. JFK, charismatic, inspiring, America's golden boy. But his life was tangled in secrets and illness. He battled Addison's disease, crippling back pain, exhaustion. Behind closed doors, he relied heavily on medications. Steroids, painkillers, amphetamines maintained his public persona. The Camelot image rested on pharmaceuticals. Then there were the affairs, dozens of them. One linked to a suspected East German spy. Cold War stakes meant blackmail could have been deadly. Charisma and charm masked vulnerability and recklessness. Camelot was fragile, its foundation unstable. Richard Nixon. If paranoia had a mascot, it was Nixon. By Watergate, distrust consumed him entirely. He bugged offices, maintained enemies lists, turned the federal government into his personal weapon. When the scandal broke, he lied relentlessly. He ordered CIA interference against FBI investigations. But the Oval Office tapes betrayed him. Secret recordings exposed the crimes beyond doubt. By 1974, Nixon resigned in disgrace. Power rots fastest when fear becomes its fuel. Even a presidency can collapse under its own shadow. And then there's Bill Clinton. By the 1990s, scandals dominated the White House. Bill Clinton's charm filled every room, but personal weakness nearly destroyed him. The affair with Monica Lewinsky erupted publicly. She was 22, an intern, vulnerable to power. The scandal led to impeachment for perjury and obstruction. Washington and media obsessed for months, dissecting every detail. Clinton survived the Senate trial. His legacy still bears the stains. Even the most charismatic leaders cannot escape human failings. Charm shields, but it does not absolve. So here's some real talk. Let me ask you this. So what do we take from all this? Presidents are not saints carved from marble. They are human, flawed, shadowed by their own choices. Power does not erase weakness. Leadership does not erase failure. History does not erase contradiction. We love myths because they feel safe and comforting. Legends shield us from uncomfortable truths about ourselves. The truth is jagged, piercing, and unflinching. Every presidency holds brilliance alongside terrible compromise. Every triumph is shadowed by moral failure. Every legacy is a mixture of light and darkness. The people in power reflect the people who choose them. Understanding this is uncomfortable, but necessary. To study history is to confront both heroes and villains. To examine leaders is to examine ourselves. And this is why Real Talk Rewind exists. We step past the textbooks, the speeches, the marble myths. We expose shadows, contradictions, and uncomfortable truths. We explore the humanity that history often buries. If this episode made you think, share it with someone, leave a review, help the show grow. And if you have a topic suggestion, email me at realtalkrewindshow@gmail.com. Until next time, I'm Chris. This has been Real Talk Rewind. Thanks for letting me into your space, and thanks for listening. And one thing, remember, history is never as clean as it seems.